Good morning, Marcel here, for those that don't know. And I would like to go a little bit deeper this morning on the topic of being fucked up the ass by a woman. And it's interesting because I received some interesting feedback from men with regards to that statement. It seemed to trigger people and for some and not for others. And so the idea of being fucked up the ass by a woman comes from the belief or the understanding that as a man, you have been taught to focus on your goals and you've been taught to withhold your emotions. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to all men. Some men are much more connected to their emotions and much comfortable in that realm. But in general, men struggle to connect to their emotions because their focuses are otherwise aligned. They're also very much defined by their friends, men. They're defined by their friends and how their friends think or feel. And there's a camaraderie that exists between them that gives them a sense of purpose and identity, which oftentimes can be quite toxic because it doesn't allow for individuality. Because men have not met themselves as individuals, there's a fear around stepping out of that safety net that they have with their bros or with their friends. So the idea of being fucked up the ass by a woman, it's exploring that contraction. It's exploring that taking my masculinity too seriously. It's exploring, as I don't know if anyone's ever insulted you and said that you're anally retentive, and what it means is that you are stiff and rigid and contractive. And it's actually true. When we experience trauma, the anus contracts. And so the anus is actually a very um, powerful area for healing when working with this work. It's the base chakra, it's the root of the pelvic region. It's the area of elimination, but it's also the area where a lot of the muscles, in response to stress or trauma, especially in our informative years when we're children, we're experiencing things that are way too much for us to process. There is a contraction around the anus that happens, and it's just a form of protection. It's how the body contracts in response to something very stressful that is happening. And over time, those muscles become rigid. And the idea of being fucked up the ass by a woman means that you are allowing the vulnerability, the softness of a woman to penetrate those rigid, hard parts of you in order to um, loosen up what has been very protected and what is very contractive. And so, in this patriarchal environment that we live in, and as a woman, and obviously I haven't experienced this to the extent that perhaps women did like 50 years ago, where they couldn't even vote. But as a woman who has grown up in a very patriarchal environment, especially here in South Africa during apartheid, now I am aware that there are audiences from all over the world. So, for instance, when I shared the video with one friend, he was very offended by the being fucked up the ass by a woman, and he felt that it was aggressive. Whereas when I shared it with another friend, his response was, "Oh, I'd love to be fucked up the ass by a woman. I just don't think my girlfriend would be up for something like that." So I know that if I had to have that conversation with someone in, for instance, Berlin, they would be much more open to it. Whereas here in South Africa, with a Judeo-Christian system and where the patriarchal system is very strong, men have a place, women have a place, um, and they are only now starting to merge. But generally, the man of the culture is contractive. He's got a lot of ego defenses and protection, and there's a rigidity to how he moves in the world, especially when it comes to women. So it's exploring the idea of getting over that rigid side of himself and starting to loosen up what is protected and painful and rigid in his body in order to start dissolving and releasing those old stories. And it's the root, and our life force cannot flow up if that contraction is holding it in place. So the kundalini energy, which originates at the base of the spine, sorry, let me turn this phone off. The kundalini energy that originates at the base of the spine, it's like a snake that's coiled up. And when we are open and we are comfortable in our bodies, we are comfortable with receiving pleasure, we accept our bodies, and we're not in a state of survival. When we explore sexuality, we're exploring our sexuality from a place of openness, and therefore the orgasmic energy can start rising up, depending on how we are exploring our sexual energy or how we are exploring lovemaking. So if it's from a place of where we're chasing the orgasm, then and I'm speaking from the perspective of a man, then what's going to happen is we're not in our bodies, the body's not relaxed, and therefore the energy can't move up. But when we become more conscious, and again from the perspective of a man, when we become more conscious with our lovemaking, where we're really in our bodies and it's not about chasing the orgasm, then the energy can start rising up, the kundalini energy, which originates at the base of the spine. The first step that needs to be taken in order for that energy to rise, because that is the ultimate aim of this work, is to get that energy to start moving up. Because when it starts moving up, it opens up all of who we are. All those areas that have gone into contraction can start loosening up. But we've got to start with the base of the spine. And that's where the anus is. And that's where many of us, women included, hold contraction due to the rigid environments that we grew up in. The strong messages around our sexuality that we were fed as children, and our relationship with our sexuality or our gender. So that is what I meant when I said every man should learn to get over himself and should experience being fucked up the ass by a woman. I say it like that, and it is quite tongue-in-cheek, because I know it's going to trigger people, and it's going to make people think, it's going to trigger people and potentially have a reaction, maybe even make people angry. How dare she say something like that? Or she's aggressive, or, people try and deflect it. And that is good, because it's stirring up something. It's stirring up anger. And so many of us repress our anger. And anger, there's a lot of anger that is locked into the base of the spine. Imagine how it must have felt as a child experiencing the things that you did that were intense and difficult, the traumas that you went through, and not being able to articulate it, not being able to express how you feel about it, having the experience potentially diminished, creating a sense of cognitive dissonance for you in the environment where you were having an experience and that was not being validated. So imagine how much anger is held around that. And for a little child, that'll get stored and trapped in the body, and oftentimes it happens in the anus. So actually, anal work is necessary and important if you want to start releasing those deeper traumas. And I have also experienced a few clients when working with the anus who have had huge emotional releases as a result. So, to wrap up this conversation, I hope that this sheds some light on my potentially controversial statement. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat box and I will get back to them. Otherwise, you're welcome to take a look at my website. There's a lot of information on there, articles that I've written and blogs that I've posted, if you're curious to find out more. So thank you for your time and for listening. Bye for now.